And with me to talk about this is my panel of political experts and analysts, and they are the former Republican governor of Pennsylvania, Tom Corbett. Mr. Corbett also served as the state attorney general and as the U.S. attorney for the Western District of Pennsylvania. Mr. Corbett now teaches law at Duquesne University in Pittsburgh. Also joining us is Keith Schmidt. Keith's background is varied, and it goes back to the Reagan presidency when he volunteered for the Reagan presidency. His run in Keith, was it 1984?
1980.
1980. All right, that's good for the first time he ran. And Keith also served as the state director for former Republican Senator Rick Santorum. And Keith also served on the Santorum Election Committee in 2012. Gentlemen, thanks so much for being with us. My regular two Democratic friends and panelists could not be with us, Joe Mystic and Jim Byrne. Hopefully they'll be joining us for the next time. So we're just going to get the Republicans' perspective at this time. And while there are a lot of topics for us to discuss today, I think two really come to the top. And that would be Joe Biden's decision to pardon his son, and also the choices that Donald Trump is making for his cabinet position. Mr. Corbett, you are the only one here who's ever had the power, sitting at this table, to pardon anyone. So your thoughts on the president pardoning his son?
It's disappointing, especially the fact that he had made promises that he wasn't going to do that, and then completely does a 180 and says he's going to do it. It concerns me in a couple different ways. It sets a bad precedent, but I think you can ignore precedent in something like this. I understand that he was worried about his son, but when you've made a promise to the people of the United States, by the way, during the campaign, and now he was not even going to be president, it doesn't say much to his word, and his word being very good. But then I also have to say that I think maybe we're seeing some more deterioration that, from his positions, a year ago through today. I think we might be seeing some more difficulty for him. And maybe this was one of those mistake decisions that he made.
Keith?
It's becoming a pretty rocky ending for this administration. It's unfortunate. It's not only it's no ordinary pardon. It's one of the most far-reaching pardons ever issued by a sitting president. I think it goes back a decade or more. And this continued rhetoric about politics being in play. At this point, the only politics in play is that the father of this convicted felon was the president of the United States. And listen, any father, any mother, we understand what comes into play here, and I think there is some degree of sympathy. And listen, even in democracies, it's not fair. Some people yield more power than others, and can help people that otherwise would not be helped because of their standing or their prestige or their office. It's not fair, but life isn't fair. But the problem is what the governor said. He said on multiple occasions he didn't ignore the question. He looked straight in the eye of the reporters and then to the American people and said, "No, I will not." And the fact that he did, it becomes a blemish on his character and his standing. I think when you look at the presidency itself, and there's other things. I mean, the Democrats are a little miffed over how all the transition to Kamala Harris happened. Did it happen too soon? He promised to be a transitionary president, and he didn't leave maybe soon enough. And they try to perpetrate this fraud that he was okay and cognizant and he could handle the job when they clearly knew that he couldn't for a long time. So there's a few stumbles that have happened in the last 4 or 5 months. That let me since there's no Democrat here, let me throw something to the Democrats here. Listen, when you're in power, you can do things. When the pendulum swings left to conservatives, liberals, Democrats, Republicans, and when they had the power, I can tell you, his first couple years, this president and this Congress passed more pieces of substantial legislation than any Congress that I've seen in recent years. So he had a very clear legislative agenda and a lot of success. So I think he started strong, but I think from the midterms on, there's a lot of reason to believe this administration and this president lost his way.
Well, there are lots who will say, and I'll let you speak here, Governor, who would say that they really started to lose, the American people started to lose faith after the Afghanistan pullout or during the Afghanistan pullout. That's when his numbers started to decline and they never really recovered. I'd like to throw this out. It's now being reported. Yeah, go ahead.
Let me add, because as I was thinking about this more, listening to Keith, two observations. Number one, as governor, I did sign a few pardons. I can't remember the number. There weren't many, because we have a process in Pennsylvania that a request for pardon has to go through the pardons board that is made up of 5 people that are there. 3 of them are there statutorily, and 2 are nominated and confirmed by the Senate. And that process requires a vote from that body to grant a pardon before it ever gets to the governor. I've never gone outside that process. I don't know of any governor who's gone outside that process. Why do I say this? From my days as an assistant U.S. attorney and United States attorney, I know that the Department of Justice has an office of pardons. I think it's in the Department of Justice. It might be at the White House, where pardons are reviewed before they ever go to the president. And they're reviewed for the appropriateness and whether these are something that should be granted. The suddenness of this, if that committee still exists, the suddenness of this tells me it did not go through that process. But the one thing I've noticed is nobody in the media has made that question and asked that question of the White House.
Well, I can tell you this. I read an article last night. I don't remember whether it was the Times or the Wall Street Journal, but the presidential press secretary did say that it did not go through the Justice Department. They did not submit it. So that answers that question. The other thing that I wanted to point out is that the counter to what's going on right now is that, and it's probably coming from the White House, but that the president, the sitting president right now, felt that with the names that were being proposed for the cabinet, that he felt that his son would be facing more prosecutions, and he decided that he didn't like that. Now I'm paraphrasing everything here, but that's kind of what is being reported right now.
And I've seen that report, and I certainly understand his position. I don't think that I could have done the same thing in that position.
And the political side of this also is it's not a get out of jail free card, but it really neutralizes this whole issue for the incoming Trump administration. I mean, all of a sudden they lost a major issue that they wanted to pound the newly elected president and the Republicans with, and this has got so much attention, and it is something that people have an easy time understanding that I think at this point that all those type of cannon fodder that was directed at Trump and his people will now pretty much slip away.
Yeah, on that point, Governor, this was a very far-reaching, as Keith pointed out before, pardon. I mean, it goes back to what, 2014, when the whole Burisma thing started.
It was far-reaching. I'd make this observation, though: state offenses, state charges, the president can't pardon on. So if there are those kind of charges that are out there, he would still be eligible for prosecution, possibly, if they're out there. But it is. I mean, if he was going to make the decision to do a pardon, you're going to make it as inclusive as you possibly can.
Well, given the 2 states that things happened in, I don't imagine there's going to be any prosecution.
Right, on the state side.
Delaware and California.
Right.
Yeah, you just kind of doubt. I mean, politics does play a role in that. What's your reaction, Keith? You mentioned this just a moment ago, of the president saying that this was a political prosecution of his son. I mean, that's kind of hard to take if you're on the conservative side, isn't it?
Let me jump in.
Yeah,
it was a prosecution of an individual who broke a crime, and it was a prosecution and investigation of an individual who happened to be related to the President of the United States. The question, therefore, is, and keep in mind, this was the Department of Justice under President Biden that continued with this prosecution. They could have dismissed the prosecution. They chose not to. It went to the courts. It went through the court system. They could have pulled that back. They chose not to. So it's easy, and I can understand why the president would say it's a political prosecution. Uh, but does that mean that if you're politically connected or politically related, you shouldn't be investigated? I don't think so.
Yeah.
And there's multiple charges, some that he pled guilty to without even a trial. I mean, it's hard to pin yourself down that this is politically motivated. I get the fact that he's the son of the sitting president, but let me assure you, it's how things end. It's the last shot across the bow. And if there's anything political about this that will be taught in classrooms and argued at coffee shops and dinner tables, it's going to be about the president in his closing days giving a far-reaching pardon to his son.
I could certainly see discussions next semester at Duquesne Law School
Oh
about
yeah,
this one subject.
100%.
Is that right? Yeah. Okay. Let's go ahead and switch topics here for a moment. And that's, we alluded to this about the president allegedly deciding that he wanted to pardon his son because of the names being proposed for attorney general and other positions within the new Trump administration, which is going to start in January. So let's get your reaction to some of these nominees. One has already decided to pull out, and that would, of course, be for the attorney general position. A lot of talk now that his choice for defense secretary is also going to be pulling out soon, or he's going to abandon that choice. So, what's your reaction to how this is going?
So I've been thinking about this and talking with colleagues here at the law firm that I work at, Spillman Thomas, and um, some of the professors. You got to go back to Donald Trump, the deal maker. And if you think about how you make deals or how you negotiate, you come in high and you're willing to come down, or you come in low and you're willing to come up. And I'm starting to think that this might just be his way of coming in with some people with names he probably knows he can't get, and then has somebody else he wants to come in with. Like, for instance, the discussion now is DeSantis. Would DeSantis have been a lightning rod initially? Yes. But is he a lightning rod compared to Hexit right now? No. Is that what he's doing? I don't know. There's going to be thousands of people across the country speculating exactly on what he's doing.
Well, and I'm going to say this: Keith Schmidt said this
I'll
the
say it
last
for
time
you.
we met, right? Didn't you? Isn't this kind of what you said, Keith?
I said at that time I wanted to take credit for this one
You did.
because I directly said on this program, Gov, that that Getz was a shill. I said, and the likely nominee will probably be a close friend or his own attorney that he didn't want to put up first because that could be controversial and he might lose it. He really wanted her, but he put him up first. And there's other ways to take care of him. You know, there's thousands of jobs without Senate confirmation that he can take care of Matt Getz. And also it gave him the ability to resign from Congress to stop the report. Listen, he might be he might be the only one playing this chess game that we're not even aware of. But as the governor said, he's a deal maker. He understands negotiation, and he thinks maybe 2 or 3 steps ahead of both the press and the American people. But I guarantee you that was a shill. He wanted the former attorney general and his personal lawyer to be attorney general.
Well, he
Governor,
made his personal lawyer the deputy attorney general.
right?
So
No, I'm sorry.
he has the the former attorney general of Florida in there, and he has his personal lawyer in there. Nothing wrong with that. And apparently, I don't know the individual, but he's got a very good resume and very good reputation.
What are your thoughts about Pam Bonaty becoming the attorney general?
I've only
And
met
let me expound on this a little bit more. Expand it, I should say. And not only your thoughts about her as becoming the attorney general, but the thoughts that he's putting people in who will then prosecute what he considers his political enemies. That's the word you hear from the Democrats.
Well, of course you hear that from the Democrats. I'm going to say from my perspective as a Republican that he's putting in people who hopefully will tell him, Mr. President, you just can't go there on this. We have to have evidence. We have to be able to prove something. Might say, yeah, we're going to investigate and go forward, but I don't know. With Pam Bondi, she has a good reputation that, from what I know in Florida, Um, she has a prosecutorial background. She also has has a experience in running a department. Um, Getz had no experience in running a department, and that's talking about budgeting. That's talking about hiring people. Um, you're included in that of being the spokesperson, really going around the country talking about the Department of Justice and talking about different programs. So he put in somebody that he thinks he can rely on. As you know from his past term that he was in, he wasn't shy in taking people out if they didn't go the way he wanted to go. So we'll see. Yeah, this is we're not even into the administration yet, and he's already taken. Two people have left, and one person a third voluntarily left.
Yeah.
And it's interesting to talk now of the sitting governor of Florida as a possible. That's now getting a lot of attention, and all the various news agencies are spreading that and asking the current nominee about it. And you got to think about, Trump thinks about legacy and protecting his own and controlling things. He may be doing this to protect the incoming vice president. Take him out of the hunt too for 2028. Make him a loyalist part of this team. Draw him into the position of the defense secretary, and possibly not have a problem with a smooth transition to his vice president upon the completion of this second term. Those things, it says, "Oh, is that?" No, it's not crazy. I mean, Trump thinks two or three moves ahead, so that could certainly be the case. And I want to go. It's sort of related to what we're talking about, because I've had this conversation with a number of people. That new the Musk
Yep.
Ramaswamy, what is that called? That it's a Department of something that for saving money. Do you know
Yeah.
what it is, Stacy? I
Not
don't
off
know.
the top of my head.
They've
Yeah.
called it something. But
Right.
let me just tell you, as long as I've been involved,
Dodge or something like that.
was it? Yeah. Okay.
Dodge or something. I don't know.
Okay. Well, as you mentioned in the introductions, I did an internship on the Reagan campaign, so I can look back 44 years, 11 different terms. And there hasn't been a president yet that hasn't put something like this together. Everybody does. Oh, we're going to save money. We're going to cut. We're going to put these people in charge. The difference now is I can't look back and say X under Clinton or Y under Reagan or Z under Bush failed, because I don't know who X, Y, and Z is. But now we put two brand people in. We put two people that have their own brand and their own standing in America. And when they leave this position, they have to go back to that life, and their brand is important. Neither one of them needs the money. So I can tell you that my prediction is it will be the first time in my lifetime that this type of agencies can have real teeth. I heard there were multiple meetings at Mar-a-Lago, more so than any other cabinet positions, and I think those meetings were about, I'll do this, Mr. President, but I need teeth. We need to actually cut, and we need to have success here, because we're also don't want to diminish our brand when we leave this position. So my prediction, we'll see how it plays out in the next year or two, is this committee for the first time is going to do some serious cutting of the federal government.
Governor, I want your reaction to that, because you ran the state of Pennsylvania. Can something like this work? I mean, you had a legislature to deal with. He's got a Congress to deal with, and they control the purse strings.
And Stacy, that's exactly what I was thinking about sitting here. You can propose that. And if you can find the internal cuts that you can make without stepping on the toes of some legislator, in this case, a congressman, or some interest group that you need, maybe you can do it. But it is much easier said than done when you're taking a look at the budget. Keep in mind, budgets usually always go up. My first budget, we went back because we had spent beyond our means from my predecessor. We had spent money that the federal government sent us, told everybody don't put it in your budget. Everybody put it in their budget, and the costs went up. Right now we're talking about the budget here in Allegheny County. Costs are always going to go up because of contracts and so forth. So in this case, what are you going to cut? Are you going to cut defense spending? Well, that affects a lot of people. It affects a lot of jobs. Uh, if they're able to find efficiencies that they can do completely internally, that would be great. but there are so many people out there that have interest, ties, hands out into the federal government. It's going to be very interesting to see what they do. The other thing I would say, if I was sitting down there, is give me a time frame. I don't. If I was in that position, I never want to be in that position. Give me a time frame. Give me something in 3 months that we can talk about. Because to do it before 3 months, there's no way you know what's going on in the government. 3 months is probably too short.
Okay, Keith, I'll throw this one out to you. Apparently, the last congressional race has now been decided in California, and it went to the Democratic side. So that margin that the Republicans have as a majority is constantly shrinking, especially with several of the people that President Trump wants to put into his cabinet or into positions within the administration. So, staying on this topic, it is Congress, I believe, and not the Senate, who really has where budget or monetary issues come forward first. If I'm not mistaken, I may be wrong on that, but if that's the case, this is this is not going to be easy for Mr. Trump to get done what he wants done.
No, it's the narrowest of majorities. So you're going to have to use the media, the social media, the bully pulpit of the presidency to get this done. They're doing it in fine fashion right now, talking about continuing to talk about the mandate, the fact that he was outspent 6.5 to 1 and still won a hearty vote, a large margin in the popular vote, 2.5 between 2.5 and 3 million people. Over 300 electoral votes. The American people have spoken, and there's going to be pressure. There's going to be pressure. There's going to be money spent. They're raising money right now because they know they're going to have to put pressure on Congress to do or to implement the president's agenda. And it's and no one did this more effectively. And it's going back. I don't know. I must be a complete fan of Ronald Reagan, but you go back 40 years ago. I mean, for time after time, the president went to the Oval Office and gave a speech to the American people and said, "Call your senator, call your congressman. I need X or I need Y. This is what you elected me to do. I'm hamstrung by these people that aren't implementing the plan that we all voted for. I need your help." So I'm not sure that it's a hard comparison between Trump and Reagan, but he does understand the media and manipulating the media. He does understand the bully pulpit. He's going to have to use it to put real pressure on Congress not to stand in the way of what the American people voted for a month ago.
And I would say the more we watch this, he's going to do it by brute force. He's not an individual finesse. And if I was a member of the Congress, of the House, it's pretty hard to tell him no if you're a Republican. It's pretty easy to tell him no if you're a Democrat. So that margin of 3 or 4, I can't imagine why he's thinking of taking anybody else out of there at this point. But he has his own way of doing things.
Well, it is interesting because several of the people he's nominated are coming from Florida, congressmen, or if indeed he puts DeSantis in as his defense secretary, you've got to hope that, and I'm sure this is the case if you're on the Republican side, that they've done their homework and said that moving DeSantis out of the governorship of Florida, you're going to get another Republican governor in there, or you're going to get another Republican congressman or two that he's taking out of Florida.
I think they feel that Florida now is a safe Republican red state.
Yeah. Okay.
I think that's fair. I think it's a lot different than it was in 2000 when we kind of balanced for months. I think it's moved a lot deeper red, and especially coming off the heels of this big victory.
Well, we'll end with this topic then, and that is that I wish our Democratic friends were with us, and maybe I'll bring this back up when they are. And that is, has Pennsylvania turned from purple to more reddish purple because of this election? I mean, it was up and down the ballot. It was Republicans that were elected.
Well, I think for at least the next 2 years it has. The first thing I would do is look at next year with the judicial. I think we have a couple of judicial races. I'm not positive statewide, but look at the county commissioners to see what happens there, and district attorneys to see what happens there. But for this race, and again, I say for this race because President-elect Trump is a unique candidate, unique individual, and can bring out the emotions on both sides of the aisle more than any president that I know in my lifetime. Keith, I think you probably agree with that.
No, I do agree. And if you just look at the comments of the soon to be senior senator from Pennsylvania, the Democrat, and what he's been saying in the last few opportunities in front of the media, you can see that he's moving towards the middle or telling people, "Wake up! We have to accept this outcome." And his rhetoric has certainly been much more moderate to conservative than the liberal mantra that elected him a couple of years ago. So I think for his own for his own sake and for his political future, he saw what happened. He's reading the tea leaves and deciding it might be time to start telling the people of Pennsylvania, I'm not a far left liberal. And I think it's been effective so far.
Now, there's a meeting I'd like to see, the first serious meeting between the new senator and now the senior senator of Pennsylvania. I'd love to be able to be a fly on the wall for that one.
Glad to be a fly on the wall.
Well, I wish we could, but we can't. So, gentlemen, thank you so much. We'll continue our look at politics after and then the analysis of what happened in this election and what may be coming up with the Trump administration. Again, if you happen to be watching or listening to this podcast, I urge you to hit the subscribe or the like button. But for right now, thanks for joining us, and we'll see you again for the next edition of Trunk and Tales.
Thank you.
Thank you.